For quite a while, I've been wanting to make a video on games that defined the Atari 2600. However, when you have a system with a lifespan that spanned well over a decade, with a catalog of over 400 individual game titles, putting everything into one video simply would have been too overwhelming both for myself and probably the viewer as well. So I decided to separate these definitive games into different categories, and today I'll be covering the definitive games from the 1970s. This will cover the early days of the system, back when it wasn't known as the Atari 2600 but rather the Atari Video Computer System. This list is made of games that I personally most associate with the system from the 70s, so you are welcome and encouraged to share your own personal list in the comments below. I've got 10 games selected, so let's get started. Here they are in chronological order of release according to the wonderful website randomterrain.com. And of course we have to start with 1977's Combat, which seems like a no-brainer for this list if there ever was one. Being the original pack-in for the system, it was the first home video game ever played by many gamers in the early 70s. This was a two-player only game, which made sense not only due to the limited memory and the difficulties in programming early AI, but it also encouraged you to share the experience of your brand new system with your friends, family, and neighbors. And if you were like me and often had to play alone, you could still play a game as a sort of a target practice for one player only. Combat had a total of 27 game variations, most of which focused on the one-on-one tank battles. My favorite involved invisible tanks that appeared when they were shot or hit, alongside projectiles that bounced around the screen. There were also various aircraft battles, like one big bomber versus 3 biplanes. Even though you were the bigger target and had to face 3 bullets, I loved controlling the behemoth. Even though it may have been the first 2600 game, if you manage to find someone to play along, it can still offer two-player fun over 40 years later. Next, I have Blackjack, also from 1977. As a kid, I was fascinated by the simple game of Blackjack, even considering that I was too young to gamble and really didn't have a desire to put my own money on the line. Blackjack for the 2600 may have some of the simplest graphics for the system, but what it lacks in graphics, it makes up for in simple, fun gameplay. Up to 3 players can face a computer dealer at the same time, and you use the paddle controllers, which actually work very well for selecting the various options and the amount you bet. You can use the difficulty switch to select between house rules and casino rules, reaching 1,000 chips and your game, essentially beating the dealer into submission. It's a simple game of blackjack done well, especially for 1977. Next I have Street Racer, also from 1977. This is another paddle game. This game features several race styles including standard street racing, slalom skiing, races where you dodge obstacles, a jet shooter, and a race where you run over numbers to gain points, as well as a race where you scoop a plus-shaped ball and put it into a computer scooper facing you. It's best played with other players, and some variations can accommodate up to 4 players, but it can still offer some fun as a single player. Let's move to 1978 with basketball. Before NBA Jam, there was basketball for the Atari Video Computer System. This one-on-one game is fairly simple, as you use a single button to jump and set the angle of your shot and release it to shoot. Lining up just right can give you a chance to steal. You can play against a friend or another random person, or face a computer who does a great job putting up a fight during each 4-minute match. This game even made a cameo appearance in the movie Airplane. It also has iconic sound effects that I can still hear in my head simply thinking about it. Home Run is another simple early sports title from 1978 that manages to be fun. It can be played with 1 or 2 players, and you can select variations with anywhere from 1 to 3 players on field when pitching. It also allows you to guide the ball when pitching. It really amazes me how games like basketball and Home Run capture fun so well that they can be more enjoyable than some basketball and baseball games several years or even decades later. The final game I have from 1978 is Outlaw. Outlaw really captured my imagination as a child, and I blame a lot of that, and I mean a lot of it, on the Clint Eastwood-inspired box art, although the large characters were also impressive at the time. In 2-player games, you'll need to deal with obstacles, which in some variations can be blown away piece by piece. You can also play variations where when you shoot, you are frozen until your bullet hits something or leaves the screen. The single-player game features various target practices that aren't nearly as fun as the 2-player game. Let's move to 1979 with bowling. Bowling translates very well into video games, and this version offers a lane full of fun. You can play it with 1 or 2 players alternating, and play variations where your ball goes straight, curves, or can even be steered by the joystick. And if you do something well, your bowler jumps in the air in a strangely amusing and satisfying way, although you probably shouldn't try to do that in real life. Next, we have Human Cannonball. This is a game for math nerds. Your goal is rather simple, taking into account position and when you adjust the angle of your cannon and shoot your stick figure man into the water tower. If you succeed, your man will raise his arms in victory. If he hits the ground, he'll say ouch, making this one of the most comical things to occur in any game from the 70s. It's not the deepest game, but it sure did leave an impression on my mind. Next, I have Superman. I remember going to a neighbor's house and being blown away by Superman. Not only could you easily identify the Man of Steel, Lois Lane, and the bad guys, but you had an actual comic book-esque story playing out in a video game. The bad guys have blown up the bridge, and it's up to you to find the pieces of the bridge and rebuild it, while at the same time capturing the bad guys and putting them back behind bars. You can also use your X-ray vision to see the surrounding screens in the city that was rather large for the time. There's a learning curve to the game, but back in the 70s, it was quite a feat to cram all of this into a single cartridge. Finally, I have Backgammon. Yep, you heard me, Backgammon. I've always enjoyed board games as a kid, but being able to play one depended on having a second player available. The introduction of video games helped make it possible to play these kind of games against a computer opponent, and Backgammon for the 2600 was one of the early examples. It uses the paddles, which may seem odd at first, but it actually works pretty well. It also gives you a few different variations. Just be advised, if the difficulty switch is in the default B position, you're supposed to throw your own physical dice and then input the results yourself. So you'll probably want to play the game in the A position, where you can have the game roll the dice for you. So there you go. 10 games from the 70s that defined the Atari video computer system for me personally. Feel free to share your definitive 70s games in the comments below, and I will see you next time.